Is on mute. So hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the workshop on our HOSA medical school journeys. So what we'll do, I'll briefly introduce myself and kind of my background in terms of medical school and HOSA. And then Aditya and Amit will also introduce themselves. And but we'll leave most of the time open for questions, just so kind of we can answer specific questions and concerns about like, the medical school process and how you can be more involved in HOSA going forward. So I was born in Kansas. We moved to Texas, so I started HOSA in high school in Texas. But I guess first about my academic background, I graduated from college at Brandeis University, and then I started at medical school over at Dartmouth in New Hampshire, and I did that for 4 years. And then after that, I did a master's of public health at Dartmouth, and then I completed general psychiatry residency at the University of Massachusetts and did a few chief residencies there. I did one in psychopharmacology in third year. I was chief resident of addiction psychiatry in my fourth year, and then also overall program chief resident my fourth year, and had a lot of good experiences with that. And you can ask me any questions too about that. Then I'm currently an addiction psychiatry fellow at Boston Medical Center in Boston. And I'll be staying on at Boston Medical Center as an attending, doing mostly outpatient care and urgent care and psychiatry, and also doing some work in the psychiatric emergency room and research and teaching as well of medical students. So that's basically my kind of academic history. In terms of HOSA, I started HOSA in 2001 in ninth grade. At that time, we didn't have any middle school division. I guess it was probably a long time before most people here were born, potentially. And then I competed all 4 years in HOSA Bowl, and we placed like in state during my junior year, but didn't get to national, or we got to nationals once. But then in sophomore year, I started doing the healthcare issues exam, and I competed in that from like 10th grade up through college, the end of college, and made it to nationals all 7 years, and then won first place in nationals for the last 6 years. And in addition to just competing, because I think competitions are really only a small part of HOSA, but kind of a more major part is like leadership and mentoring. And so when I got to Brandeis University, I started my HOSA chapter there. And then a couple years into college and junior year, I started the process to start Massachusetts HOSA, and we completed that process successfully around 2009. And following that, I became more involved with New Hampshire HOSA and helped to organize some of their conferences and helped organize, kind of have Dartmouth College host a lot of our state events. And I also did a lot of mentoring of students in New Hampshire and Vermont. And I'm currently on the New Hampshire HOSA Board of Directors, and I've been on the board since like 2014, I think. And I've also been, I was the alumni director in New Hampshire HOSA for a while. And currently I'm on the National Board of Directors as the alumni representative, currently enrolled in a postgraduate fellowship program. And so I think the main thing is like just I've been staying involved in really trying to help mentor and give back. And I think it's important when you're in a position that you can kind of offer your resources to students that you do, so you don't just kind of disappear after you graduate from HOSA, and just continue to stay involved. And so that's what I've been doing basically since 2001. So we can talk more about that with any questions you might have, but I think right now I'll turn it over to Aditya.
Hi, everyone. My resume is not as long as William's. I think he has more positions than like every year I've spent in HOSA. But I was a national officer back in the day, as well as a state officer for New Jersey. And after that, I went back to New Jersey and helped out with advising the state officer team. Did some leadership development training with them, which was a very fun thing. I see some familiar faces on. So it's nice to know people still. But academically, I went to Rutgers University, graduated in 2018. And before that, I went to high school in New Jersey. And, you know, like many of you, it was a vocational school. So HOSA was like my sport, my bread and butter. So I went on to college and continued with HOSA. It's where I served as a national officer. and I was able to get involved again as a advisor, which was really cool, going from one side to the other. Um, it was really nice staying involved, and I also got involved with Louisiana HOSA while I was down there for grad school, and going back to school in Louisiana. So hopefully, I'll see some faces again. But career-wise, I'm a career researcher. I started out in college just really liking what I was doing, asking questions, sitting under the microscope. So that really like appealed to me. I was also working at the morgue at the time, so it was really cool, like, cutting open into human beings. It's life altering. So from there, I moved on to the natural next thing, in vivo work, which means in the body. So that means basic, like, a little bit of animal testing, but it's okay. We have to do it. So I did a lot of mice and rats work. Would not touch a pig or a dog, so I stick to rodents only. But that's what I still do. I work for Johnson and Johnson right now in the microbiome infectious diseases department. So pretty sensational being there this past year. I'm not happy to be leaving this position in the next 3 weeks, because I'm starting medical school in August. So it's good and bad. I'm definitely going to miss this job, but I think the future will be equally fun. Um, but yeah, I'm a hardcore researcher, and hopefully research will stay in my future, and so will HOSA. So I'll turn it over to Amitoj.
Thanks, Aditya. And so, hi, everybody. I'm Amitaj, and I grew up in California. I joined HOSA during my junior year of high school. It was a lot of fun. I definitely joined on a whim, and my high school wasn't at the time, it wasn't all that vocational or career technical education oriented. It was pretty new. So we kind of had no idea that these sort of schools exist. And so when we went to state and did medical math or medical terminology, I mean, we got slaughtered. So it was a real wake up call as to the talent that the organization has. And so, I was hooked. It was some of the I think the most talented people I've ever met, and everyone was socially oriented, and it was just a great place to be. And so I decided to run for state office. I failed miserably my first election. It didn't work out. I did the growth and I came back, and I was lucky enough to be a California state vice president, and then went on the next year to be national president. And so HOSA, I think, is the type of place where you can grow almost indefinitely. You can go towards any sort of area you want, whether it's leadership or getting good at competition, and it can give you whatever it is you're looking for. The mentorship is really great here. I met William and Aditya in those roles, and they've been invaluable to my journey so far. But getting more into that, the type of competitions I liked were prepared speech and extemporaneous speaking. And there was one time that I got first place at state, so that was really exciting. That was a big deal for me. So that was cool. And then largely I went to UCLA and I studied neuroscience there, and helped set up a HOSA chapter at a local community college. That was a lot of fun. They all did really well in their competitions, and it was a real great experience for all of us. And some of you, if you go on to post-secondary institutions, I highly encourage you to speak with William. He's kind of the authority on this, on how to set up a post-secondary chapter there. One, that leadership looks really good on med school applications, and two, it shows that continued interest, that there was something you were a part about, and something you were a part of, and something that you cared about long enough to stay in it. And that's what they're kind of looking for, I believe, in the admissions process, is more so consistency rather than have you done 20 different things. And so at UCLA, we were doing neuroscience, and so I worked in research that was related to spinal circuitry in the back of rodents. And the sci-fi interpretation was, if you could, they had found like a kind of like a backdoor, like inner neuron circuitry that helped reflexes move the legs. I know that was a little too much, but it was exciting stuff. And the idea was that maybe you could find a way to innervate backdoor circuits to help paralyzed people move or get some sort of firing back again. And so that was really exciting. And I took a more exploratory role. I decided to go work in sales. I tried working in a startup. I had a good run in operations and logistics. I was working with Tesla for a little bit. And so that was a lot of fun. And eventually I realized that medicine's where I want to be. The corporate grind, it was fun. I really liked it. But I think at the end of the day, I feel best when I'm helping people. And I really like being around the community of people that I ran into in HOSA. And so I decided to change careers. I currently do cardiology clinical research at UCSF, and I'm studying for the MCAT right now, and I'll be applying next cycle. So we'll see how it goes. But wherever you are in your journey, I believe the breadth of experiences between myself, Aditya, and William, we should be able to help you out regardless of where you're at. And, you know, there's tons of mistakes that we've made along the way, and we'd be happy to help you prevent them. Yeah, and that's all it for my intro. So, William, I'll let you take it from here.
So if any, we can just open it up for questions, and at the end, we'll kind of give our final thoughts. But if right now, anybody that wants to ask a question, just kind of unmute yourself and start asking. It looks like Krishna Martinez has a question, so I will try to unmute her. Let's see how do you do that?
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so I had a little bit of a question that kind of concerns HOSA and your journeys in med school and going to med school. And it was whether your career aspirations kind of came as a result of HOSA, or if it was before HOSA, you know, your experiences after, where you fall in that.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So when I started out, so my dad's actually has a PhD, so he was doing research. So initially I thought I wanted to do just like microbiology or some sort of medical research. And then I got more involved in HOSA and really started to learn more about kind of just caring for people directly, and got like more and more interested in that. So that kind of steered me toward that. And then in college, I decided really to go pre-med. So I think HOSA really did kind of steer me in that direction and teach me like what I actually wanted to do. And I think in addition, or Amit, any kind of additions to that? Or?
I think I definitely had an idea of what career path I wanted to go in. HOSA definitely had a reinforcing idea on that kind of. I knew I wanted to go into medicine, I just didn't know how, but HOSA played the interesting role of being able to facilitate me meeting the right people at the right moments to really capitalize on the network that, you know, it had. So I was able to get like pretty good research positions, just saying or mentioning HOSA within the application process, and that definitely had its weight.
Yeah. Oh, and then myself, definitely, I would say that. I mean, I think like kind of for me, maybe some of you might relate. There was a little bit of like, it was kind of like a family thing. I think like, at least in my household, they kind of were hoping, you know, that one of us would kind of go down that field. And I think for me, what HOSA gave me was it gave me like that organic interest, as opposed to, oh, this is just what I'm going to do because these are the expectations, or I've always taken biology, or I've always been a science guy, like something like that. I think it kind of just going to those workshops where you get to meet these physicians that have been doing this for 20, 30 years, and they talk to you about their approaches to public health and how they do their clinical care and things like that. I mean, that really makes a difference. I think there was one doctor I met, it was my first year, and to this day, I think this has influenced the type of leader I was, or at least am. And it was that he had a patient that just could not get her cholesterol right. It just wouldn't happen. And so he's talking to her about, you know, what I don't understand. Like when we talk about it, it seems like you get it, but these numbers are not changing. And then one day he stops by her house, because I guess they were friends like that. And he finds out that she can't really afford healthy food. And so a better move on his part, or at least a better results oriented move, is he has to have that sort of factoring that in. And I think that holistic care, and I don't know, when I saw him just sort of talking about the level of effort he was putting in to help this person change their life, I mean, there's something about it. It just kind of pulls you into it. It's meaningful, and it makes you feel good about yourself. And so I think those combined experiences, I mean, it kind of just solidified that I think this is the path I feel good about, and I think this is what I'll chase. And we'll try to have shorter answers. I think I got a little too excited on that one.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Definitely. And it looks like Dorian has a question, so you can unmute yourself.
So I know one of you mentioned mistakes along the way, so without necessarily exposing yourselves, what were some of those turning points or realizations?
You mean in terms of like deciding on medical school?
Either that or going through that whole process.
Yeah, and when like nobody in my family is an MD, so I didn't realize kind of how long of a journey it is, and looking back, it is like really intense. So I guess I made the decision in a kind of naive, but I'm happy I did it. And the turning point for me, I guess, was really like first year of college, kind of realizing that with basic medical research, you do a lot, and that's like the basis of all healthcare. But I really wanted to be involved with human beings and actually talking to them directly and helping them kind of more directly. And so kind of entering college, I just kind of started to realize that. I don't think there was any like particular event that turned me that way, but kind of it was a process over time. And then so I decided to do the MD. And then going forward, I think it's important to mention too, like it is a long road. So like I really did not do well in chemistry or organic chemistry, or not too well in physics, and really terribly in calculus. And a lot of people, like my class at Brand, I started out 50% of people wanting to do pre-med, and then by the end it was like much lower. So, and it's easy to get distracted and discouraged. And it's easy to think like your GPA is not good, so you're not going to get into medical school. Like my GPA at the end of like 4 years after all of that was pretty terrible. It was like 3.38, but I had a really good MCAT score, so that kind of helped it. Plus I had all the leadership experience with HOSA, and that really helped a lot, and like super like letters of recommendation, so that also helped. So I think the main thing is as you're going through the college process, which is pretty intense, like not getting discouraged or keeping your mind on the goal, and being able to kind of know that you want to be a doctor, and know that whatever happens in college is not really reflective of how you're going to perform clinically, and keeping that in mind if ever or whenever something kind of difficult happens. And then medical school itself is really intense too, especially the first 2 years. You basically learn what you learned in your college science classes plus more, and in a much shorter amount of time. And then the last 2 years, it's pretty intense too, because you're in the clinic or a hospital all day. Then you still have to study for board exams and everything at the same time. But once again, just keeping in mind your primary goal of treating patients, and knowing that eventually, like no matter how you perform in your like academic courses, like your ability to perform good clinical care is a different subject, and keeping your mind on that and working on developing those interactions with people. And so that's what I guess I would say for that, just keep it short. But Aditya or Amit, any like suggestions too?
Yeah, I've definitely made my fair share of mistakes applying to medical school and, on the journey. My GPA, once again, wasn't stellar, but luckily medical schools look at more things than just a GPA. So I think the big three would be the GPA, MCAT, and extracurriculars. So where my GPA lacked, my MCAT and extracurriculars made up for it. So in the grand scheme of things, I was okay, but it was a very stressful college time, being like, oh my God, what have I done? So if you're in that same boat, rest assured there is salvation. But beyond that, like the turning point where I knew there was nothing more that I could do in life except medicine, it probably had to be my last year of college, where I was working at the morgue. So I was doing something called plastination, where I would remove organs from cadavers and embalm them in like different sorts of plastics and polymers that we use in like 21st century today. So that enables it to be like, preserved, so students could like touch it, study it. So faculty would come to me and ask for a different organ system, like, can I get a heart? Can I get a lung? And I'd be like, yeah, sure. Let me research how to get that for you. So it was really cool being able to look at how to harvest these organs and, how to plastinate them. And that's where it really sunk in, is like, I want the science behind medicine. And yeah, the idea of talking to patients and being able to use my science knowledge to help them, that just kind of consolidated that this is what I need to do. Amit?
Yeah, so mistakes, plenty. We actually made a workshop on how to read research papers better. And largely that workshop is really just about how to read better, and like how to go through your academic material, actually learning it and not memorizing it. And I think largely the biggest thing that I would say is, you're going to study stuff that's going to feel a little monotonous. Like you've probably seen genetics like 4 or 5 times. I know you've seen mitosis at least 10. And so these things, they don't really like go away. But I think accepting that this is just part of the ride and that your time will eventually come, that is really important to remind yourself. And when you're reading these research papers, I mean, for my major, we had to read a few papers a week, and there would be quizzes on Fridays. And I think somewhere along the way, I noticed this in the cohort, we kind of lost that initial love that we applied with, reading the papers, going like, whoa, this is so cool, like synapses and, all this stuff. And it became about getting the points. And it was like, well, if I don't get the points, I won't get the grades, I won't get into medical school, and my life is over. And so it was this mentality that I think it really kind of took away from the fun of learning. And I think when I was able to adopt that back, it rekindled that love for learning, which I think is probably the most important part of this journey, because it's going to be a marathon. You're not going to be done in 4 years. And if you want to specialize, like, that's another 4. And working in cardiology, I see people that are there, like, this is their 15th year. They've got like 4 kids. So you want to really think about why you're in the game. And it sounds like if you're in HOSA, you already probably have like a caregiving or that type of personality because this organization drew you, right, in some way. So I think for yourselves, just when you're learning, try to, if you can, try to make it, I guess, more fun, as silly as it might sound, but I guess just try to enjoy it. That, think about the time and energy that these people put into this research, like they clearly thought that they were going to find something, hours and hours of washing vials and things like that. And I guess on that note, I would say when you go into college, if you go to some of the bigger schools or even some of the more competitive schools, it's really hard to get those initial research positions. And it might even be discouraging. You might do all the work, all the moves that you think are the right moves. Like you read 3 of the person's papers, you read their CV, you emailed them, you followed up, you were great, you were charming, you didn't get it. And that happens. And it might happen 5-10 times. And it's not personal. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways you should have is all these rejections, you're going to face many, far more than you face successes. They're not personal. Like, it's not because you weren't good enough. You just have to keep going till somebody takes a chance. And I that's probably the one thing I would tell myself going back is when you get that, sorry, you were great, it was 3rd round, but we went with somebody else. It's okay. Just, let it out and then go send the next application that day and just stick with it. And, the rewards will come. And that's what I got.
Yeah, I would echo that too. Like, I applied to maybe 14 or 15 medical schools, and I interviewed at 7, and then I was like, but I was on the wait list for 7 of those. I was ejected from 1. So I didn't have any kind of going into like 4 months before medical school started. I had no acceptances, and I was like super scared and extremely stressed, and it was awful. But I reached out to Dartmouth and kind of said how much I wanted to go there, and I was taken off the wait list from Dartmouth. So I think never giving up hope and knowing kind of, even if like your first school doesn't accept you initially, if you're on the wait list, like, don't give up hope. Like, there's always something more that can be done. And sometimes people do have to apply multiple times, but just kind of keeping that goal in mind and knowing that eventually you can do it. So.
I definitely want to like echo that sentiment. First, that medicine is just a trying game until you finally like get in. My first research, like looking for my first research position, I think my sophomore year of college, I sent out 35 emails to 35 different professors. 3 responded, out of which 1 turned into a lunch interview, out of which nothing came of it. And then 6 months later, someone else from my department reached out to me because they knew how much I wanted something, and that's how it actually turned out. So it's sometimes, it's really hard, but you have to keep your head up and definitely, push through it. And the other big thing was absolutely like try to make learning fun. This was something that I didn't realize until like very recently. Like, I was an old school person, like trying to write with a pen and paper throughout college. Like, what was I doing? No, I should have bought an iPad with a pencil and then just started drawing on all my notes. I did that in grad school and it made a world of difference. So I've been converted to digital notes, and that's what makes me happy now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and then also, I guess, just one more thing before you ask or answer another question. So I think try not to just rely on yourself too. Like, it's hard to kind of go at this alone, but always, like, if you're stressed, like reaching out to mentors, and if you have questions, reaching out, either you can always reach out to us or to other mentors in your lives too. And just trying, like, the more people you have supporting you and the more people you have getting information for you and helping you, kind of the easier it is and the less stressful and the less easily you'll get burned out. So kind of remembering that too. And but sorry, any more questions? I think we have a few more minutes that we can answer questions.
Well, I guess while we wait for the next question, I was just going to add a little thing. I mean, largely like the role Aditya and like William have played in my journey has been very invaluable. And there's friends that I made in HOSA, and we live in 3 different states, right? So I feel like for you guys, I don't know how many of you guys here are state officers or chapter officers or anything like that, but if you can, even the people in this group or the people that you meet with, try to connect on LinkedIn, try to connect in some sort of professional way and build those bonds so that 10 years from now, when all of you talented individuals are, big shots in healthcare or whatever field you go into, that HOSA connection ties us all together. And that's the whole point of all this, is that we go through these experiences together, and now we have this vast network of immensely capable individuals, and we can make a difference together, and it starts here. I think a bunch of questions came in, so.
Yeah.
So I guess we can maybe take Via Star's question first. So looking back, is there anything you wish you had done differently, if anything? I guess for me, I would say nothing that necessarily I would change in college, except perhaps like getting more study support from professors in organic chemistry and classes like that, just because I did do pretty poorly. And even though I did eventually get into medical school, it was probably would have been easier if I had done well in those courses, but it wasn't necessary, of course. But and then in medical school, kind of once you get to that point, I think trying to do research and getting more involved in volunteer service, because I focused on mostly studying in medical school and getting really good grades, which I did, but I still had a hard time to get into residency too. So I think just research is becoming more important once you're a medical student to get into a lot of different good residency programs. And but Aditya and Amit?
I think about this a lot actually, because I took what is now like 3 gap years. So there's a part of me that regrets taking this much time to go into medical school, but at the same time, I think it makes me a much stronger applicant. And I have so much research experience now that I no longer need to actually search for labs. It's more like, do I want to work with them, and they reaching out to me. So it's a much nicer place to be in my life. Yeah, did I miss out on a few years of studying? Yeah, sure, but I think it made me the stronger candidate overall. Let's see, Amit.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And, it's weird. I asked, like, there's like a hero of mine I had a chance to meet once, and I asked him that. He's had like an incredible life. And his answer to me was there's no point even really kind of asking that, because that's no way to live life. And I know, like, while initially that may sound like, oh, you're just writing it off, but the thing is, like, you don't really know how it was going to turn out. Like, you might think this might have been the better timeline if I had done this, if I had done that, but that's like one scenario you're imagining out of so many that could have been. And so I think the best advice I could give you is just try really hard. Like, when it comes to whatever it is that you're doing, whatever your major is, whatever your classes are, like, just take that extra step. Like, sit in the front row, go to office hours, ask intelligent questions. Like, I'll tell you right now, like, if there's PowerPoints for your lectures and you read the PowerPoint slides an hour before your lecture, your retention goes up, I think, like 30% or something. It's pretty nuts. There's all sorts of these study techniques. You can use Anki nowadays. There's everything there to make learning way easier than it was for our parents. Like, they had to sit there and write, like, like back and forth. You can make like intelligent flashcards that can tell you now, like, here, we can get you to learn everything by the end of whatever deadline the test is. But that stuff can be YouTubed, but largely is just make the most out of whatever it is that you're doing now. And regardless whether you fail or succeed, in 10 years, you'll feel good about yourself, because you'll be like, I tried hard. I did everything I could have done. I ran for that chapter office position. I didn't get it. Oh, well, it made me a better speaker. And then who knows, the next interview you go to, you land the job and you're not as nervous because you've already been rejected. So don't think too much. I should have done this. I should have done that. Just try really hard and try to enjoy the process as much as you can. And I guarantee you'll have a good time.
And then the next question from Theodore: did you have any doubts in your journey? And if you did, how did you stay confident and resilient? So I would say it is a long road, and I did have kind of some doubts. Not too much in college, a little bit like during the application process, and it was dragging on, and I wasn't getting acceptances. But and then I would say kind of more so the last 2 years of medical school, because some of the rotations are pretty intense, and I didn't feel as prepared as I could have in terms of kind of knowing how to be, like how to interact as a medical student on the team. And but I think I just kept my goal in mind that I wanted to be a doctor, and I knew that's what I wanted to do, and that there will always be challenges, but challenges are temporary, and there's nothing kind of that is going to last forever. And everybody in school, like in college and in medical school, are there to help you. Like they want you to succeed, and they're there for support too. So just kind of keeping your goals in mind and knowing that you can always reach out for support. And that's how kind of I was able to stay confident too and resilient. And I think we're at 4 o'clock, but hopefully if we can keep the recording going for a little while, maybe Ahmed and Aditya can answer too. And then we have one more question in the chat, and then we'll go through that too.
Yeah, so this question hits pretty close to home. I actually just handed in my 2 weeks notice today for Johnson & Johnson. And working there is like kind of a dream of mine, you know, being a part of this company while the COVID pandemic is happening in the same department. I was working on a vaccine for pneumonia and cystic fibrosis using CRISPR-Cas3 technology. So sensational stuff. And, you know, walking away from this job definitely was not an easy thing to do, but I know looking forward 10 years, if I don't do this and I don't go to medical school, I think I'll have a lot more regrets than if I stayed and, you know, continue in this position. So I like to say I'm confident in my decision. It is a huge risk, financial and personal, that, you know, going to school for this amount is in today's day and age. But, you know, in 5-6 years, I think I'll have a different perspective on it, and I'll stay resilient and confident going through it. Amit?
Yeah, so I think, you know, as far as doubts in the journey go, like you're always going to have that, you know, like there's like chances are just by averages, like you're probably not going to be like top of the curve, right? Because just one person. So you're going to get scores that aren't going to make you feel super confident all the time. So what you got to trust in is why you're doing it and who you are. And so I think what's helped the most is maybe write down like 3 values that you use to describe yourself. Like, what are your 3 values? Are you persistent? Are you diligent? Like, do you work hard? You're caring? Like, what are your qualities, right? And then think about why you're doing this. Are you doing it because your parents want you to do it? Are you doing it because you like the way the white coat looks? You want the respect, the so you got to think, is it because I want to help people, or I want to be, and if your reason is really strong, it'll get you through those tougher nights. You know, it's like 12 a.m. and acid base equilibria is not making sense and your test is at 8. That's going to happen. And so like more often than not, really. And so you just got to have a reason, and honestly keep visualizing it. You have this thing called a reticular activator in your brain, right? And so this thing is built to hunt for whatever it is that you really want. Like that's its sole purpose, right? So if you're thinking about yourself in a white coat, or a doctor, a nurse, whatever it is that you want to do, you're going to be drawn towards that. And those negative thoughts, everybody has them. Like there's nobody who doesn't have them. And so just know that everybody else is feeling it too. So just breathe, do your best, and just work hard. And honestly, like asking questions, I think has been my greatest strength, like throughout life. Like I was never nervous about asking if I didn't know. And that's made all the difference in my journey. You know, there's nothing wrong with not knowing. And if you ask in the middle of class and you're like the only person who has their hand up, you know, that's okay, because you'll know the answer once it's over. So I think like just kind of run with that and just know who you are and why you want to do it. And I think that you'll build the right type of confidence. It won't be based on, oh, well, I'm smart, I have this GPA. It'll be, this is who I am as a person. And, you know, you'll do it the right way.
And the next question from Nicholas: while leadership has been cited multiple times in this session as a key benefit HOSA provides each of you when it came to applying for medical school, and what else have you seen the impact of HOSA to be on your professional educational careers? Like, did we find research or clinical opportunities through networking in the organization? So for me, I know that HOSA has a lot. Like when I was in HOSA, I think we didn't have as many opportunities for kind of research or clinical internships, but I think we're getting more and more now. So if I were still a student member, I probably would participate more in that. So I didn't really engage with HOSA in that way as a student. I just did like competitive events and leadership, but I think definitely kind of getting as involved as you can in the research and clinical opportunities that HOSA has, like in the internships, like Surgeon General's internship, or the internships with the Public Health Service and the Medical Reserve Corps, and other opportunities. So I think that would definitely enhance your resume and also just give you a good experience too, kind of going into medical school.
I've definitely capitalized on the HOSA network multiple times. I was an RA in college, but the reason I got that job, I remember distinctly during the interview, they asked me, when was a time that you've had to like mitigate differences among people? So I was able to reflect on a state officer experience I had where, you know, two students weren't getting involved, weren't getting along during like an election process. And, you know, the experience paid off right then and there. I was able to get the position, secured scholarship to get myself through college. Eventually that paid off into me meeting people who would eventually introduce me to the morgue director and how I got my morgue job, influencing me why I should go into medicine. So it almost came in a full circle. Call it fate, call it, you know, whatever, but it definitely worked out in my favor. So I hope other people, you know, use HOSA to have similar experiences. And that's really the compelling reason that brings me back to, you know, volunteer or, you know, be an advisor. So, you know, the experiences and opportunities that were available for me, you know, continue to be there for others down the line.
Yeah, and I would say also for that, just doing good for HOSA and for the next generation of students also helps you too, because like you get that opportunity to mentor, and you also learn from students. Like it's not just like a one-way learning. So I think just being involved as much as you can in HOSA, because the organization really depends on alumni, and that will also really help you in your journey too. And I guess that Ahmet have
Yeah.
other
Just a little quick one. I think so when we're talking about like leadership and things of that nature, you don't have to be like a chapter or state officer. Like there's like 200,000 members like active, and there's only going to be like maybe 100, 200 of those, right? Something like that. So the point is, when you go to these, like when you're filling out college apps, or if some of you are applying to grad schools or stuff, you're going to have to explain what you did. You don't get to just say, oh, vice president of this, and then it's done and you get a bunch of points. And I say, all right, you were, I don't know, you were able to get the position. What did you do once you had that kind of, I don't know, ability or influence? So, I mean, honestly, you could make quite a few moves without any sort of title. Like do something in your community, do anything. I think, so it's funny. I think this almost leaks into the next question is, when I failed that first election for regionals miserably, there was just a lot of things I didn't have at the time. So you got to be honest with yourself. Write down, what did I do? Like, was that a good speech? No. Were you prepared? Not really. So I feel like now you know what to target. Like, had you done anything to better your community that you thought you might bring value to a state level organization? No. So then I go back, and you know, it's hard to say those things because you thought you had it going for it. And so you give yourself that check and you start working on it. And so I go, okay, what's a problem in my community right now? I don't think the tutoring is very good, right? Like I don't know how much value I can provide at 17, but I could teach younger students stuff. And so that's what we did. We went to the local library and we tutored kids for free for hours, at like 2 hours at a time, 3-4 days a week, and it blew up. We had no idea. It was just three of us. And so just that little bit of initiative, like if you were to spell that out in your college essay, that was the journey you had, they're not going to care whether you were a state officer or like local. They're going to see this person makes their community better wherever they go. We want them in our community. So that's how these admissions officers think. They want to see, what are you going to do when we give you resources? Are you going to do something with it? And so that's how you want to think. It's not so much about the point, it's what kind of person are you going to become? So that's the math that they're doing. And I think when it comes to, okay, when you go to these competitions and you're not doing too well, you got to do that reverse engineering process. Okay, which problems was I getting wrong? Oh, all the ones that required dimensional analysis. Okay, well, that was most of the test on medical math. I should go watch some like videos on this. So find a way. And it's HOSA. Like you could Google like the winners, I think, or at least we used to be able to. Oh, this is so funny. I actually did the exact same thing. So I was terrible at writing speeches. And so I like just not good. I just didn't have it. And so when I found this guy, his name was Raul. And I mean, this guy had won nationals at, I think, the prepared writing back when that was like a thing. And his speech, and it was beautiful. Like it was, I've never seen such great writing, and he was my age. And so I asked him, like, can you, I don't even know what we used. It wasn't Zoom back then, but we did a video chat, and he just kind of worked with me. And so that's what I mean about like asking for help. And then naturally, next time I ran, I win the election. And so, it doesn't matter if you're not good now, just learn, ask for help and get better. You can do it. Like you're capable. You have what it takes. It's just, are you willing to do the work? And that's what's ultimately going to decide whether or not you get what you want.
Okay, and yeah, one more question. You've mentioned not performing well after medical term competition, and it opened your eyes to the talent of HOSA. After this, what did you and your chapter do in order to improve and better yourselves as students? So I guess we can all. I've also had some times in HOSA competitions that weren't as good, so I can also talk about that too. Like my first year competing in the healthcare issues exam, I did not place. But I, like Amit was saying, I went back and I kind of figured out what I could have done better, like how to study. And the next year I had this kind of systematic way of studying, and it worked for me for the years after that. So, and I did that individually, but I think ideally, kind of making yourself available to either to fellow students or once you graduate, and coming back as a mentor and letting students know that you can mentor them either in your event or in other events you feel comfortable with. And because like I said, HOSA really runs on alumni, and like the more alumni that are involved and the more you do once you're an alumni member for students, I think the better the organization will be and the better the students will be able to succeed. And so that's what I try to do, kind of just giving back to state organizations and nationally, just to be able to kind of improve students' ability to reach their goals. And Ahmed and Aditya.
Well, to speak to the talent of HOSA, I think HOSA definitely has probably some of the smartest kids in, the United States. And just being able to like compete against them, you're definitely operating at a higher standard than, the general population. So I've definitely fell short in many, many competitions. I think I did a creative problem solving back in the day. Yeah, did not do well. Then the next year, we practice, we got our idle side down. I don't know if that's still the formula for how it works. It's like identify, define, list. But that worked. And then the following year we were able to place, we came to nationals. And so it's just, being diligent and don't get disheartened if you lose and, feel great if you win.
Yeah, exactly. It's just break down what it is that you want and just go after it. I think when I ran for national office, I mean, you go up against like some of the best leaders in the country. And I mean, these guys are good. They speak very eloquently. They know why they're there, and they're not there to play. And so I must have watched at least like a couple hundred speeches leading up to that moment, because you just got to be willing to do that. And like that's just what it comes down to. So when it goes to your competition, I mean, if you don't do well, step it up. Like that's all you can do, right? And I guarantee you, like when you put that work in, even if you lose, you'll feel fine because you tried. And I remember like during that election for that particular example, I remember thinking I'll be totally fine if this doesn't go my way, because I left it all on the field. Like I don't think I could have tried harder. And so I think like if you go about every experience that you have doing that kind of energy, you'll be happy no matter who you become. You'll be fine because you'll be like, all right, I did what I could. So I think, keep that energy with wherever you go. And I mean, HOSA has so many different competitive events. Do things that make you nervous. Like you've never been a team person, do HOSA Bowl. Just try it. Like, so what if you don't place? It's the point is to grow as much as you can, fail quickly, learn, and move forward. And so I think, in this organization, do the best you can to network with each other, because it's going to be you guys that are coming back and running these workshops. And it's going to be us when we're all collective individuals spread across the United States, all professionals. This network is going to mean something based on what we make of it. And, HOSA kids, for sure, the most talent I've ever seen. And honestly, take pride that this is your tribe. Like, it's okay you didn't place. Like, a lot of the kids here are amazing, like this is a great place to compete. So it's, I wouldn't let the losses get to you, and just keep at it. It's enjoy the ride.
Yeah, and so I think that was the last question we had listed. If anybody else has more questions, we can maybe keep it going as long as people are available. But I thought we would just maybe do some final thoughts just in case the Zoom shuts off. So in terms of medical school, kind of just recapping, it is a long and intense process, but just keeping your eyes on the goal and reaching out as much as you can for support. Sometimes it can become overwhelming, and not to be too kind of down on the whole process, but like in medical school, we had one of our students at Dartmouth committed suicide. And so, and these kinds of things happen often. When I was in residency, there were people at other programs that we knew about, at least a couple in psychiatry that committed suicide, and I believe in other programs too. So sometimes it can be so intense that people do feel driven to that, but it is like a final and irreversible solution to what's only a temporary problem. So no problem is going to last forever. So just remembering that, and if you ever feel like things are getting too hard, or you feel like you're not succeeding in the way you want to, and you're starting to have thoughts like that of hurting yourself, just kind of reaching out for support, and reaching out either to emergency services or family or friends as necessary, because we all want you to succeed, and we all want you to stay here and be able to give back to future students too. So that's kind of about medical school, and then about HOSA too. Like I was saying, I think your involvement in HOSA, it helps you a lot, but it also really helps the future generation. And keeping that in mind, once you do succeed, and once you make it to medical school, and after that, remembering kind of where you came from, and what you were given as a HOSA member in terms of mentorship, and how well your advisors and how well the volunteers served you, and just being able, knowing that kind of giving back is really what the organization is all about. And that can also help you over time too. And not just waiting until like you've graduated medical school or gone into residency or are an attending, but you can even give back, like Amma was saying, in high school to younger students, or even in college to high school students, and judging or giving workshops at state or national conferences, and things like that are all possible as an alumni. So that's what I would say. Just checking my notes to see if make sure I didn't miss anything I wanted to say. Yeah, so that's basically all I would say. Oh, just one more thing about medical school too. I think a lot of people often think you need to just like focus on sciences and do really well in that, but medical schools are really looking for more well-rounded individuals now. And like I was a linguistic and anthropology major in addition to biology, and I did a lot of creative writing and plays at college. And so showing them that you have like a more human side and involved in like social sciences or the humanities can really add another dimension to your application, which I think is really helpful for getting admitted to medical school. So that's basically what I had to say. I'm always available. I think my email should be on the website. Put it in the chat as well. And Ahmed and you can also put their contact information if you want. But also, like, you can please give some final thoughts too.
Sure. Yeah. So echoing off that, there's definitely a kind of a cookie cutter mold for the average medical student. You definitely want to try to go against that and identify yourself as a unique individual, and that will do you, great. That'll give you great results when applying. You don't want to focus all on academics or research, but be a well-rounded, unique individual. Like, have your hobbies, interests all laid out. Another big thing is with HOSA. HOSA is the kind of organization where you will get back exactly what you put in, if not more. So, in whatever capacity that means, whether that's competitive events or volunteering or networking, give it all you can, and hopefully you will see some kind of yield for your energy, and you'll get some kind of return on investment. I know it definitely paid off tenfold for me, so I know I can vouch that it might happen for you too.
Yeah, and you for all of you who are here, you came here seeking knowledge, right? The title's about medical school, so you already have like the most important quality is you're seeking answers. And so I feel like when you're going throughout this med school process, I think, that major thing is really important. Study something that you love. You don't have to study bio if you don't want to. Like there's only like 7 subjects on the MCAT. And so you can take those courses throughout I know only 7, but it's how it is, So study things that you want to study. And that way, when you're studying the sciences, you can enjoy it, And I highly recommend a book called When Breath Becomes Air. If you haven't read it, it was really eye-opening and gave me a lot of perspective. I mean, this guy just had an amazing life, just all around stud, and you never know when life happens to you. And I think it's important to read that book. And he's a guy who becomes like a spinal surgeon at Stanford. And I think when you read this guy's story, and in the end he ends up getting cancer, but that's just the first 5 pages. You'll be fine. So it'll give you perspective that you want to appreciate all the time that you have now. You don't want to think, oh, I'll be free and happy once I'm in med school. Like you want to think, okay, I'm getting an education about things I care about now, enjoy now. And that way you can enjoy the present and focus on becoming the person you could be rather than worrying about med school all the time. And I think this is probably the biggest problem a lot of pre-meds face is that, okay, once I get into med school, my problems will be over. Something like that. No, they actually kind of increase. Yeah, I did the seconding that. I think it's some of the most beautiful writing I've ever seen, and it's a short book. Highly recommend it. And you have our emails in this chat. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll definitely give you tips and advice. Like if we're telling you we're here to network and help you guys to succeed, we mean it. So ask us any questions you have. We'd be happy to help in any way, shape, or form. And I think as far as planning goes, curriculum wise, you can totally plan out. Just you want to make some sort of like checklist. Okay, I want to have this many 100 hours of volunteering. Okay, I think currently I'm interested in cardio, so I'm going to find a way to shadow a cardio person at least a few hours a week. And I think, when you're applying to these research positions, it's okay. I think the email that got me into like this really good lab was I literally asked him if I could just wash his vials because nobody was saying yes. Like I just couldn't get it. And so I asked him like, look, I'll stop by twice a week and wash your vials. And I did. And he said it was fine. And so I started asking him, can you teach me more stuff like thermo imaging and things like that? And most people will reward somebody who wants to learn. And so I think like if you just kind of walk with that attitude, humble and you want to learn, everyone's going to kind of want to help you. I think that's it. It makes all the world's difference. And, it's just, I guess, enjoy the ride and do your best. And, the typical stuff. Where can you look for research opportunities? So that's a great question. Honestly, I would just do it the brute force method. Like go to like whatever department you're interested in. And like, you probably haven't shadowed all these departments. Like, you don't know, just go off a precursory interest. Like, okay, you want to learn about cancer, find the oncology department if you have it, or if you're connected to a hospital or something, and just to read like 2-3 other papers. Actually, it's perfect because our workshop that we made on how to read a paper will help you tremendously in this. So you can read like 2-3 of their papers and you can do it pretty quickly. And you can have an intelligent discussion with this person about it. So I think one time what I did was there was this professor who was working on electromagnetic stimulation of these worms called C. elegans. And so I read 3 of his papers, came up with, I don't know, just an idea that a question I had based off of those papers, and I sent it to him. I said, I'd love to learn more about this. Can I please just meet with you, or can I just volunteer in your lab sometime? And he was like, yeah, I like what you asked. Swing by and let's talk. And so for a quarter, I got to be in his thing. And like, this is on the back of like 50 rejections. So, just stick to the method and keep going. Your time will come and don't take it personally. And, all the stuff we said here today, if you internalize it, I think you're good to go. Just, you know what to do.
Another piece of advice I could give is set up like a draft document to email all the people that you want for research positions. So you basically have one letter that you're going to be sending out, and you just replace key elements like dear who, your department, and then their interest. I would say 2 to 3 questions on their specific area of research would probably entice them enough to try to like talk to you more. But having that available and ready to go will definitely facilitate how many applications you can get out. Because at the end of the day, I do feel it's a numbers game of getting some amount of work out and then hits back.
Yeah, and then one more thing too, there are also really good formal internships too. Like there's a summer undergraduate research fellowship for people who are, I think, sophomores and juniors in college. I did one of those at UT Southwestern, but I think they have them all over the country. And they have also, those are mostly basic research, but they also have, I think, various medical clinical research fellowships as well. So kind of looking online for those. And I think there's another question, what can I do in high school related to neurology? I think in high school, kind of the opportunities can be a bit more limited. When you get into college, it's easier to get involved in research. But I think reaching out, seeing if you have any connections, like the easiest way to get into a lab is like connections, either family or teachers, and asking if they know anybody in a local university who could kind of at least talk to you about their research and have you kind of shadow them. And those are really good like initial opportunities if you're interested in neurology or any other field, just kind of starting out by shadowing and asking questions and learning more. And then what are some good volunteering opportunities for fields in medical informatics? I don't have, I'm not too sure, but I would say again, kind of looking into like asking around locally or looking online. I don't know if Aditya or Amit have more information about that or.
My question was going to be, what is medical informatics?
Me too. I was playing it cool.
And I assume it's like kind of looking into kind of like information processing, I think, in terms of kind of medical, the medical field, and kind of thinking about the information you receive medically in terms of diagnoses or like rates of diseases or things like that, and kind of how we can use computational processes to improve care and care delivery is what I would assume. But once again, I also don't have too much familiarity with medical informatics. But I think looking online for like local departments at local universities is really the best first option, and telling them that you're interested in and seeing if you can shadow. And
I was gonna say just one thing. A lot of like our education system, like the way you learn all throughout elementary school and high school, is like here's homework assignments, and then here's a test that like may or may not test the stuff that you covered in homework. So a lot of it is like regurgitation. They don't really teach you too much like, well, what do you think? Right? Like that doesn't really happen too much. And like it, the system is just kind of the way it is. And so, like here, William, you want to pay attention to the thought process. Like when you asked William a question he didn't know, it didn't like rattle him or throw him off. His thought process was, okay, well, I'll just go find an answer. And so that thought process is what you want. That's what's infinitely more valuable than an answer. And I think Google is like famous for asking questions that there's no way you could know, and they're looking for your thought process. And so I think that what you want to do, and this is especially showing up on the MCAT, the more I study it, the more I see it, you can't memorize it's not the way to go. And I think when we're talking about like these IT or these special things, you want to focus on training your brain to reverse engineer. Okay, here's where I'm at. This is what I want. What is all this in between? And so what you want to do is, okay, I need to get into some sort of IT or informatics role. Okay, are there any companies near me that have that? Step one, like, is it even near me? Right? Step two, how do I talk to this person? So, okay, like, okay, I'm 17. I don't know too many things. I don't have like a lot of skill I can really provide this person. So, okay, is there a way that I could just come to your office and shadow you for 2, 3 hours or just 2 hours? Something. Can I meet you for lunch or something? Anything. Find a way to learn about what their job tasks are. And then you find the one that seems the most annoying to that person's daily routine and you do it for them. And now you just built a relationship or something, right? Like that thought process is what I'm trying to show you. Like you could copy that word for word, but you want to find a way to deliver some sort of value to somebody that has something you're trying to learn. And if you can do that, they'll take you in. Like they're going to respect that kind of hustle. Like, oh my God, this kid's 17 and wants to like do my work for me, or just something like, and if that hustle is there, at least they'll guide you, or maybe they'll say, go learn this language or something like that. And so you want to be able to find answers. Like that is perhaps the most coveted skill, I think, in the workforce that's coming up. And so just keep that in mind, regardless of how specific or how, whatever it is that you want, just focus on that. Okay, what's the immediate step right before that? And then just keep going.
And I would echo that too, and just kind of add that try not to get too kind of overwhelmed when you're looking into asking professors to shadow or to work on research projects with you. I think all of them have also been at the same place that you are right now. And just because you're in high school, it doesn't mean that you don't know anything and you don't have anything to contribute. Like you have a lot of learning behind you already, and you have a lot to contribute, and you have a lot of potential. And knowing that, and knowing that kind of everybody has been in your place before. And ideally, if somebody's a good mentor, they won't approach you like kind of top down, like hierarchical. They'll be welcoming and try to help you feel comfortable to learn and to ask questions. And that's the main thing to remember. So I think it looks like we only have 5 minutes left, but any more questions or thoughts at all? Yeah, okay, so what makes you a standout for college? So I would say making good grades is helpful, but it's not like everything. Like I said, really doing leadership events, like starting something on your own is even better, and leading that, and not just kind of stopping it once college is done, but being able to set up the framework so that it can be continued following graduation. And also, and I guess for college, so basically when you're in high school, doing the same kind of thing, like starting something new. Like I interviewed students for Dartmouth, and some of them had like started companies or things like that. But you don't need to do anything like really super huge. Just kind of even at your local level, like looking at a problem in your community, and there are always problems in communities, and just doing what you need to do to address that problem, and being a leader in your community is good. And not just focusing on academics, but doing like volunteer service, doing like competitive events in HOSA or other organizations, doing other types of like sports or other extracurriculars. Like being a well-rounded person is basically what makes you stand out well, in addition to having good grades and good letters of recommendation too.
I think it's also pretty important to be unique. Focus on what makes you, who you are. Don't try to be someone else when you can just be yourself. And that works for entering into medical school as well, because you have 40,000 applicants for about 10,000 seats. So 1 out of 4 is going to make it in, essentially. So you definitely have to represent yourself well. And to go off an example, like when I was interviewing at Tulane, they didn't ask me about my research. They didn't ask me about my grades or anything. They saw that on the application. But what they did ask me was on my hobby. And I wrote down motorcycling. So I was able to have like a good chat with them about, what this sport is for me, and, why it kind of like comes into why I want to be a physician. And that was unique about me. And I guess that sealed the deal.
Yeah, like the best interviews are those that are conversational, and they leave the person kind of remembering and wanting to be talking more to you even after the time is up, and not just focusing on academics or things like that. And I know in the chat, there was kind of a focus on the International Science and Engineering Fair, which I think is also very important too. That's an excellent opportunity to get more involved in like real science research and make your mark there too. And then I think one more question, we should have time for a couple minutes. Would you recommend looking at applying to 6 or 7 year programs rather than normally just going to undergrad and medical school? It's possible. I was encouraged to do that because my GPA was kind of low. I decided not to. Instead, I took a couple years off and worked in my dad's laboratory for a couple years doing research. And then I applied to medical school, which I think probably did help. And but I think it's not necessarily necessary. Like you can, if you have good grades, you have done a lot of good leadership, and your application is strong, then even applying immediately. I think Aditya can speak more to kind of the extended program.
Definitely. I think there's some advantages and disadvantages to doing something like this. One thing that you should definitely look for before committing to a program would be look at what kind of residency you want, because the residency is what determines the kind of doctor you are, not where you go to medical school. Well, it does to an extent, but essentially the residency is going to determine what kind of doctor you are. So you have to kind of think about where or what you want to do. And based on that, apply to the programs that give you numbers that favor that outcome. For example, like Tulane makes 1/3 of its classes some kind of surgeon. I'm very interested in surgery, so it seemed like a good bet for me to go to Tulane. So you should look at the school, what kind of doctors they're producing. And if those numbers are agreeable to you, then I suggest, this is something that you could do. But it is something you should absolutely, absolutely research, stress about, talk to many people, talk to the school itself, talk to other people not affiliated with the school, talk to a competitor school, get all the information you can get, because this is a serious decision. You're committing to staying in one place for 6 to 7 years. Like, that's something that you can't make lightly. So do your due diligence on that.
Mhm. And Ahmed, any thoughts on kind of going forward and what
I
you would-
think Dorian just made a comment, and I think that that's great, right? Like he was given the chance to go to this program, and he made the decision that there are some freedoms that I want to keep, and that awareness with yourself is extremely important, and I feel sometimes undervalued, really. And so I guess on that topic, when we're talking about, okay, what kind of, what do these colleges look for, right? I mean, I remember being obsessed with this college admissions process. Like, I mean, it was everything. It was there's so much pressure on kids these days, especially. And I think what you want to focus on the most, of course, you want those grades. And what makes those grades kind of easier to get is if it's fun, right? You want to critical think, and now you can do better on these standardized tests. You want to focus on the qualities that will give you these things, like not just the score and the grades. And if you do that, you'll succeed regardless. And so I feel like colleges, I mean, like really, if you ever want to know how to influence another person, just think about them, right? Like exercise your empathy and think about, okay, who is my admissions officer? It's going to be somebody that reads like a paper with like a blacked out credentials and name, and they're going to judge this essay and think, okay, can this person, if we give them all the resources that this school has, are they going to do something with it? Or are those resources better off in the hands of somebody else? And I know for UCLA, the way they would do it is there would be 3 people who looked at your application. It would be like if one person checked it, it would move on to the next round. And basically it was, you had to get 2 checks to get in. And so that was the game, right? Like it's pretty nuts that it comes down to just 2 checks between 3 people, right? Like that this is your admission decision. So you don't want to place too much stock on whether what school you get into. It's not it's not like a good bet to place. The way you want to do it is, okay, what kind of person am I becoming? And then when you apply to these schools as yourself, whatever schools take you, you're going to feel something for it because they took you as you. You weren't trying to sell yourself to the school. You were being you and they took you. And I guarantee you that works. And so, I've helped a lot of kids write essays, and this is, I would say, like the thing that I've seen like work time and time again is when they say be yourself, it means these volunteering opportunities that you're doing, don't just do 100 hours at Sutter Hospital because, everybody else is doing it. Do it because you want to do it. Like if you're interested in, I don't know, like volleyball or something, 100 hours of volleyball volunteering is equally as effective as 100 hours of at a hospital, as long as you can say why you care about it and what it means to you. And so that's what they're looking for is this person someone who makes their community better? Do they take their education seriously? Like, do you value the fact that you live in the United States? You don't live in a country where you can't go to school. Like, are you aware of these privileges and are you doing something with them? And so I think that's what they're looking for. And if you show them like, hey, wherever I'm at, I try to make, lemonade with the lemons I have, every school is going to want you. And if they don't have space, like that's fine. Somebody else will take you. Your undergrad is not going to define you as a person. And so I think just kind of, I think everything we've said here is really a good compilation of all the lessons we could tell our younger selves. I mean, so if you take them, I guarantee you they'll pay dividends for you. It's just, just follow it. But you guys seem really great and we'd love to see you guys succeed.
Excellent. And thank you everybody so much for coming. It looks like our moderator said we're out of time now, but definitely you can always write to all of us with any other questions as you go forward. And I wish you best of luck with the rest of the conference too.
Good luck.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
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 Thank you too.
Loved hearing your guys' stories. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Uh,